My friend, living 70 years is like crossing the universe, not in a straight line, but in spirals, detours, mysterious paths. Each step is a constellation of experiences, some enlightened, others obscure, but all with their value, with their reason for existing. Throughout this journey, I realized that wisdom does not lie in knowing everything, but in knowing what to let go of. The human mind has a strange habit of clinging to ideas, to past hurts, to obligations that no longer make sense. And just as in the cosmos, where everything is in constant movement, we too need to learn to let go, simplify, flow. During my life, I've been surrounded by theories, equations, profound concepts about time, space, energy. But the greatest discoveries I've made didn't come from calculations. They came from observing existence itself, from silence, from mistakes, from the humility of not controlling everything. When I turned 70, the newspapers asked me to give a speech. A journalist asked me, "Professor, what would you say to someone who is entering this phase of life?" I thought for a moment and replied, "There is no single answer, but perhaps I can offer some ideas that have helped me to live with more lightness and authenticity." That's how these 15 ideas I've decided to share were born. They are not formulas, because life, like time and space, is relative. What works for one person may not make sense for another, but perhaps by listening to these reflections, you'll find something that shines a light on your own journey. Clarity, a sense of relief. These ideas didn't come from books or experiments, but from real life, from pain and beauty, from the moments when I lost myself and found myself. They are invitations to look at yourself more kindly and walk more lightly. Because in the end, what matters is not how much time we have, but how we choose to live it. Throughout my life, I've often found myself saying yes when, inside, everything in me wanted to say no. It was an almost automatic impulse, a need to please, not to disappoint, to be polite. But time has taught me that every yes we give unwillingly is actually a no we give ourselves. In the eyes of physics, time is a precious dimension. Every second is energy, an opportunity. And just as we can't be in two places at once, we can't embrace everything and everyone without losing ourselves in the process. The reality is that by accepting everything, you fragment yourself. And a fragmented, exhausted human being can hardly find clarity or peace. I remember a time when my schedule was full of commitments, lectures, visits, collaborations. I accepted everything. It seemed like the right thing to do, but what did I realize? My mind became more and more agitated, and my soul became silent. I was living in function of the other, and had lost the space I needed to reflect, to create, to simply exist. Saying no is not rudeness. It's respect for your own vital energy. Just as the universe expands, we also need to expand our understanding of boundaries. They don't keep us away from people. They bring us closer to what really matters. I began to make more conscious choices. I accepted fewer invitations, but I was more present in the moments I chose. I realized that quality replaces quantity, and that the encounters I accepted with enthusiasm were truer, more memorable. So, if I could give you a piece of advice based on the physics of life, I would say, evaluate each yes as an equation. Ask yourself, does this bring me closer to who I am, or does it alienate me? If the answer is doubt, perhaps no is the wiser choice. The freedom to say no is often the key to living with integrity and lightness. Don't feel guilty about it. The universe is vast, but your time, my friend, is finite, and it must be respected as the precious commodity that it is. For many years of my life, I pursued the idea of perfection. In calculations, in words, in decisions. I sought accuracy, as if the world were a finely tuned machine where everything could and should work with absolute precision. But over time, I realized a simple and liberating truth. Life is not a laboratory experiment. It is fluid, full of uncontrollable variables, and its beauty lies precisely there, in imperfection. I've often criticized myself for the mistakes I've made. I thought, you should have known better, done things differently, sus, been more attentive. This internal voice, relentless, accompanied me for years. And do you know what I realized? It didn't make me evolve. It just prevented me from appreciating what I had already achieved. Self-criticism, when exaggerated, is like a distorted mirror. You only see the defects, never the whole. And often, the search for perfection is just fear in disguise. Fear of failing, of being judged, of not being enough. Observing nature, I saw that no flower is perfectly symmetrical. No star shines in the same way as another, and yet everything fits together. Imperfection is part of the bigger picture. When I understood this, I began to look at myself, and others more kindly. My mistakes taught me more than my successes. The mistakes I've made have made me more human, more understanding. If I had held on to the need to be perfect, I might never have dared to question, to create, to try. So, if you find yourself demanding too much, always looking for that unattainable standard, remember this: the world doesn't need your perfection. It needs your truth, your sincere surrender. Be as you are with flaws and successes, because that in itself is a miracle. What's more, treat yourself as you would an old friend, with understanding, with patience. Because living is a process, not an end result. We live in times when being constantly busy is seen as a virtue, almost a badge of honor. People are proud to say that they have no time, that they are always running around, always doing something. At one point in my life, I was involved in so many tasks that time seemed to slip through my fingers. However, it was precisely in the pauses, the quiet hours, the unhurried moments, that my most valuable ideas emerged. The theory of relativity wasn't born in the midst of noise, but in the midst of contemplation, of quietly questioning what seemed obvious. Nature teaches us this clearly. Look at the river. It doesn't flow at full speed all the time. There are stretches where it slows down, goes around, spreads out, and it is in these stretches that it renews itself, gains strength. It's the same for us. Being busy all the time is not the same as being alive. I used to walk every day with no destination, no defined purpose, just walking and observing. And in those moments I realized connections. I understood things that the intense work didn't allow me to see. Silence became a master. Pause became an ally. Today, I see many people rushing from one commitment to another, believing that stopping is a waste of time. But time isn't wasted by stopping. It's wasted when lived without presence, without meaning. And the constant rush robs us of the chance to perceive the beauty that exists in the little things. If I can give you one piece of advice, it's this: don't be afraid of the void in your schedule. It's not an absence of life, but a space for life to reveal itself more deeply. A quiet coffee, a conversation without an end time, a sunset enjoyed in silence. These moments are worth more than 1,000 tasks completed in a hurry. Throughout our lives, we will inevitably be hurt. Harsh words, injustices, betrayals. We all know these moments, and it's natural to feel angry when you've been hurt. But over time, I realized that holding on to that anger is like holding a burning ember with the intention of throwing it at the other person and getting burned in the process. During the difficult years in which I witnessed conflict, persecution, and loss, I saw the power of resentment spread like a dense energy that poisons thought and obscures reason. Resentment doesn't just bind the past to the present, it eternalizes it, like a weight that refuses to fall off. I remember a brilliant friend whose mind was clouded by a grudge he had carried for decades. Whenever he spoke of that episode, his eyes became hard, his voice lost its softness. He had allowed one moment of pain to dominate years of his life, and that, for me, was a lesson. Forgiveness, contrary to what many people think, is not a favor you do for someone else. It's a gift you give yourself. Forgiveness is letting go of the anchor that holds you to an old pain so that you can sail freely on the seas of the present. This doesn't mean forgetting, nor does it mean justifying serious mistakes. It means understanding that the past cannot be changed, and that constantly reliving it does not undo it. It only perpetuates it. Life is too short to spend it carrying unnecessary burdens in your heart. Just as the universe is constantly expanding, we too can expand our spirit, choosing lightness over burden, peace over anger. Letting go of resentment is freeing up energy, space, and time to live more serenely. So, my friend, look at your pain, acknowledge it, but don't embrace it forever. Forgiveness doesn't erase scars, but it allows them to heal painlessly, and that, perhaps, is the real cure. I have always believed that technology is a fascinating creation of human beings, a reflection of their curiosity, their ability to dream of the impossible. It can be a bridge between worlds, between minds. But I've learned over time that not every innovation needs to be followed, not every novelty needs to be adopted. In the last few years of my life, I've seen the world accelerate, devices appearing, every day new ways of communicating, working and living. And with them also came a silent pressure, as if it were necessary to always be up to date, always connected, always mastering what's new. One day, a young man asked me, "Professor, have you ever tried such technology?" I smiled and said, "No, my dear, and I haven't tried playing the violin with my feet either, simply because it doesn't bring me any joy or need. True intelligence doesn't lie in absorbing everything, but in knowing how to choose what makes sense for your life." I, who have always loved to contemplate silence, reading, free time to think, saw that many of these tendencies took me away from that. They made noise where I was looking for calm. Technology should be our servant, not our mistress. It should facilitate, not complicate. The problem is not with the devices, but with the idea that we are obliged to keep up with them, at the risk of appearing outdated. But what is outdated? Perhaps it's just living in your own time without being dragged down by the pace of others. Today, I invite you to do the same. Use what brings you closer to what you love, and let go of what keeps you from peace. Don't feel obliged to know everything, to understand everything. Even I didn't understand everything, and I didn't need to. A free mind is one that makes conscious choices and doesn't live under the pressure of the new. And remember, the value of your life is not in the number of applications you master, but in the quality of the moments you live. For many years I worried, as we all do, about other people's opinions. Will I be accepted? Will they understand my ideas? Am I doing what they expect of me? It's natural to want to be respected, liked, and understood. But to live as a prisoner of other people's expectations is to waste one's existence. When I published some of my theories, many people laughed, doubted, and criticized. They said I was a dreamer, a provocateur. I tried to explain, I tried to argue, but I realized that we won't always be understood. And that's fine. The truth is that you can please or be true to yourself, but you'll rarely be able to do both at the same time. The human mind is restless and often insecure. That's why it seeks validation. It wants to hear, "You're right, you did well." But over time I understood that the real judge of my life couldn't be someone from outside. It had to be me. Looking in the mirror and feeling at peace, that became my measure. Worrying too much about other people's opinions holds us hostage. We start to act not with freedom, but with caution. We censor our words, our dreams, our gestures, and little by little we cease to exist authentically. Over the years, I've learned that living truthfully is more important than being understood, and that those who really love us accept us with our mistakes, our successes, and even our craziest ideas. The rest are distant echoes that shouldn't dictate the course of our soul. So, if I can offer you one piece of advice, it's this. Listen to your heart more than to applause or criticism. Walk lightly and free yourself from the obligation to please. Life is too short to be lived as a spectacle for others. Live as poetry for yourself. Throughout my life, I've noticed that many people live as if they were building a museum, accumulating objects, clothes, memories, material achievements, as if the meaning of existence lay in what they can count or show off. But over time, I've come to understand that the true value of life doesn't fit on shelves, nor is it measured in numbers. I've spent a good part of my life in simple spaces, a modest office, a small house, books and papers all around. Not because I couldn't have more, but because I learned that having less allowed me to think more. Fewer distractions, fewer worries, more clarity. Possession requires maintenance. Everything you own also owns you, in a way. An object requires a space, care, and time. And time, my friend, is the most precious commodity we have, and the easiest to waste. I've met people who, in their quest to have more, have lost the essentials. They spent energy organizing, protecting, counting what they had. And when they stopped, they realized they hadn't lived. The objects were there, pristine, but the moments had slipped away. Accumulating is often trying to fill a void that can only be filled by experiences, affection, and inner peace. When I realized this, I began to simplify. I got rid of what no longer served me. I donated, passed on, let go, and with that I felt lighter, freer. I'm not saying that comfort isn't important. It is. But the line between comfort and excess is subtle, and often when we cross it, we start to live surrounded by things but far from ourselves. Today I invite you to look around and inside yourself. What really serves you? What holds you back? What can you release to make room for what matters? Life, like the universe, is about expansion. But sometimes, in order to expand your spirit, you have to empty your physical space. I've always had an appreciation for order and logic. In science, it's essential to calculate, predict, and organize ideas clearly. But in life, I've discovered that trying to control every step doesn't guarantee safety, it guarantees anxiety. For a while I tried to plan my time, my projects, my interactions, almost as if I could write a perfect script of existence. But the reality is that, however much we think we're in charge, life has its own mathematics, full of variables beyond our reach. I've seen people spend days, sometimes months, drawing up detailed plans for their lives, where they would be, with whom, in what situation. And when something went wrong, and it always does, they suffered. They suffered not because of the event itself, but because of the frustration of seeing the plan fall apart. It was by observing nature that I understood the beauty of the unpredictable. Look at the sky. The stars follow laws, but they shine with spontaneity. Trees grow with a purpose but without a rigid script, and we human beings can learn from this. Today I believe that planning should be a guide, not a prison. A map drawn in pencil, not permanent ink. Allowing yourself flexibility is not carelessness, it's wisdom. Leaving room for the unexpected is giving life the chance to surprise, and it's often in the detours that we find the most beautiful landscapes. I remember a day when an appointment was cancelled at the last minute. Instead of regretting it, I decided to walk down a different street. I got to know a new place, talked to a stranger who became a friend. That wasn't in the plan, but it was certainly better than it. If I can give you one piece of advice, it's this. Plan, yes, but don't get attached. Live with intention, but also with lightness. And when something goes wrong, take a deep breath and trust. Maybe there's something there that you never imagined, but that you needed to experience. For many years, I tried to understand how the universe worked. I wanted to understand why things happen, how they connect, where they go. Studying, questioning, searching for meaning, this has always driven me. But at the same time, I learned an important lesson. Understanding is not the same as controlling. There is a subtle but powerful difference. The desire to understand can lead us to wisdom. The desire to control often leads to frustration, because no matter how much we calculate, how much we prepare, how much we desire, not everything follows our will. I remember situations in which, even after thinking about every detail, the result was different from what I expected. And at first I got angry. I thought, where did I go wrong? But over time I realized that it wasn't a mistake. It was just life showing its own way. And curiously enough, that path was often better than the one I had planned. Control. It is a comfortable illusion. It gives us a sense of security, of mastery. But the truth is that there are forces, encounters and events that are completely beyond our reach. And that's okay. That's not weakness. It's simply reality. Look at the river. It has direction. It flows. But it doesn't control every stone, every bend. It follows, adapts, goes around obstacles, and gets where it needs to go. We too can live like this, with intention, but with flexibility, with effort, but without rigidity. I've learned to trust life more, to do my part with dedication, and then let go, to accept that results don't define who I am. What defines me is the way I walk, the way I act, the way I relate to what happens, however it happens. So, If you feel like you need to be in control of everything, stop for a moment. Breathe. Ask yourself, what really depends on me, and what can I leave in the hands of time? Letting go is not giving up. It's trusting. Time, my friend, is a patient sculptor. It doesn't ask. It doesn't warn. It simply passes and transforms us. The face gains lines, the hair loses color, the body slows down. And in the face of these changes, many people look in the mirror and criticize themselves as if time were something to be fought against. But over the years, I've learned something fundamental. Every wrinkle is a feature of life, not a defect. When I was young, I also valued vitality, strength, and agility. But as the years went by, I realized that true beauty does not lie in outward appearance, but in the gaze, a gaze that has seen a lot, that understands more, that judges less. I've met men and women who tortured themselves by seeing their images change. They would say, "I'm getting old and I'm losing value." And this has always saddened me, because a person's value is not measured by the youth they carry on their face, but by the life they carry in their soul. I myself gradually noticed that my body no longer responded as it used to. My energy decreased, my eyesight required more care, but instead of rebelling, I learned to listen to my body, to respect it, to be grateful for everything it had allowed me to experience. Every mark was a memory, every pain a reminder of movement, of history. Criticizing yourself for getting older is like criticizing a tree that matures, or a star that shines less brightly but more wisely. Everything in nature changes. So do we, and that's natural, it's dignified, it's beautiful. So if you look at yourself rigidly, try to change your outlook. See your marks as medals, your limitations as a sign of a long journey. Treat yourself with the kindness you would offer an old friend. Your body is no longer the same, but it's still your home, and it deserves care, not criticism. For most of my life, I've been surrounded by debates, theories, and differing opinions. Science is, by nature, a field of clashing ideas, but over time I realized that there is a fine line between defending a truth and insisting on being right at any cost. In the early years, I wanted to convince, I wanted to prove. I felt I needed to show that my thoughts were valid, correct. But I learned, often with some discomfort, that the desire to be right often distances us from the other person, and even more so, distances us from true listening. I remember long discussions where I came out victorious, but with a void. Winning an argument while the other person keeps quiet out of tiredness or embarrassment is not victory, it's isolation, and that over the years becomes worthless. The constant need to be right is often born out of fear, fear of not being respected, of appearing weak, of losing control. But look, a really strong mind doesn't need to prove anything. It listens, ponders, and sometimes chooses silence as a form of wisdom. There is beauty in saying "I don't know." There is freedom in accepting that not everything needs an immediate answer, and there is peace in allowing others to think differently. After all, the universe is vast, and wouldn't it be natural for there to be multiple paths of thought? Today I see that being right is not the goal. The goal is to understand, to grow, to live together, and that requires humility. It requires knowing how to give in, accept points of view, recognize mistakes. This doesn't diminish us. It makes us more human. If I can offer you one thought, it's this. Before you try to win an argument, ask yourself, is this going to bring you closer together or drive you further apart? Sometimes giving in is wisdom, and what you gain is more precious than reason. You gain connection. The human mind has a curious habit of comparing itself. It's almost automatic. We look around and measure who has more, who has done more, who has come further. And inevitably, when we do this, we feel small, insufficient. But I've learned over the course of my life that comparing yourself is like trying to measure the distance between stars with a common ruler. It just doesn't make sense. Each person has their own path, their own time, their own invisible challenges. When we only look at the other person's result, we ignore the path they have traveled, and, even more seriously, we forget to look at our own path. I remember times when I was compared or compared myself. So-and-so published more, Cicrano was recognized earlier, Beltrano seemed brighter. This caused discomfort, of course. But over time I realized that this unease was not born of reality, but of the illusion that there is a universal finish line and that we are all running the same race. The truth is different. Each life is a universe. Each human being is a unique equation with variables that only they know. Comparing yourself is, in essence, denying yourself the right to be unique. I began to value small personal achievements, not in comparison to others, but in relation to who I was yesterday. That changed everything. I began to feel gratitude. Instead of frustration, joy instead of envy. If I can offer you anything, it's this: look less at others and more at yourself, not to judge, but to recognize how far you've come. The comparison that counts is the one that inspires, not the one that diminishes. What matters is not the brilliance of others, but the light you yourself carry and how you spread it in the world. Over time, I've realized that haste isn't just a rhythm. It's a way of living. Many people live as if they were constantly late. They wake up in a hurry, eat in a hurry, talk in a hurry, and when the day is over, they feel they haven't really lived at all. Life, for many, has become a sequence of tasks to be completed, not moments to be lived. I too have experienced moments of urgency, deadlines, commitments, expectations. But the most valuable moments I've experienced haven't been the rushed or efficient ones. They were the slow ones, the leisurely coffees, the silent walks, the conversations that didn't look at the clock. There is something deeply human about slowness. When you do something slowly, making tea, listening to music, walking down a street, you connect with the now. And the now, my friend, is the only real time that exists. The past is memory. The future is hypothesis. Life happens here, right now. Science has also taught me this. Great ideas don't come about in the noise or the rush. They arise in the interval, in the pause, in contemplation. It was in a moment of silence that I imagined light traveling through space. No rush, no pressure, just observation and presence. Rushing steals details. When you rush, you don't see the colors, you don't smell the aromas, you don't hear the ambient music. And most seriously, you don't listen to yourself. The soul also has a voice, but it only speaks when there is silence and time. So if you can, slow down. Do less, feel more. Live breakfast as if it were a ceremony. Listen to someone with real attention. Walk without a destination. Because life isn't a marathon, it's a dance. And dancing in a hurry is no fun. During my life, I've seen people chasing riches as if the meaning of existence lay in what they can buy or show off. Bigger houses, full coffers, accumulated titles, all in the name of a security that often never comes because it's based on something that never satiates. I myself have never been a rich man, nor have I ever wanted to be. I preferred to invest my time in thoughts, conversations, music, and silent walks, because I understood early on that the value of life is not in possessions, but in the experiences we carry within us. Modern society makes us believe that we need to have more in order to be more. But look, the more we own, the more we need to look after, protect, and maintain. And little by little, the things we acquire begin to possess us. They take up our time, our attention, our peace. I knew a man who, at the end of his life, had everything: property, investments, valuable objects. But he told me, "I have a lot, but I've lived very little. I was always too busy accumulating, and I never stopped to really live." That struck me deeply. True wealth is not measured in figures, but in moments that warm the heart. An afternoon with friends, a shared laugh, a book that transforms, a simple trip that leaves eternal memories. These treasures don't lose value over time. They increase it. Money is useful, yes. It offers comfort, possibilities. But it is a means, not an end. When it becomes the center of life, we move away from what really matters: connection, meaning, inner peace. Today, if I can tell you one thing, it's this: invest more in experiences than in objects. Use your time and resources to live with presence, not to hoard out of fear. True security comes from a peaceful mind, not a full bank account. The human mind has the wonderful and dangerous ability to anticipate. We think about what might happen, what we want to avoid, what we want to achieve. We make plans, we map out paths, and without realizing it, we start living in a time that hasn't arrived yet. As a physicist, I studied time in depth. I discovered that it is not absolute, that it can bend, expand, and contract. But there's something that no study has taught me. No matter how hard you try, you can't live in tomorrow. You can only live now. For years, I worried about what was to come, about the future of science, of humanity, of my own choices. This is partly natural. But I realized that by thinking too much about what was to come, I stopped savoring what was in front of me. I've seen many people live like this, always preparing, always waiting. They saved their best clothes for special occasions that never came. They put off dreams, postponed meetings, all in the name of an idealized future. And then, time passed, and they realized that they had waited so long that they had forgotten to live. I'm not saying that you should ignore tomorrow. Planning is good, direction is necessary, but there's a fine line between looking ahead and living stuck in what hasn't happened yet. Excessive worry doesn't solve problems. It just robs you of the peace of the present. Now is all we have and all we are. This is when we can love, create, smile, and rest. The past is memory. The future, chance. Real life is here, in this moment, that you are reading these words. If you can, live more slowly, breathe, feel, be present in what you do. The future will come, with or without anxiety, and when it does, it will be easier to face it with the calm of someone who has lived the present well. My friend, if you've made it this far with me, I want to thank you. Sharing these reflections was more than just a speech, it was an invitation. Not for you to follow in my footsteps, but for you to reflect on your own. Because in the end, every life is a unique equation, with variables that only you know. These 15 ideas I've shared aren't rules or absolute truths. They are just observations, made over a lifetime dedicated to thinking, feeling, and living with curiosity. When I turned 70, I realized that wisdom lies not in knowing more, but in wanting less. Less weight, less pressure, less haste. With every wrinkle I gained, with every step I slowed down, I understood that life doesn't have to be grandiose to be meaningful. It needs to be real. And for that to happen, you often have to leave behind what no longer serves you. Guilt, haste, the need to please, to control, to accumulate. Living well is not a matter of luck or circumstance. It's a choice. Choosing to be present, choosing to be kind to yourself, choosing what deserves your attention and what can simply be let go. That, perhaps, is true freedom. I don't know how much time I have left, and the truth is that I never have. But I have learned that each day can be a universe, full of little beauties that only those who are attentive can see. A smile, a sound, a memory, a conversation. And that's why, as I close these words, I invite you to live more lightly. Let go of what weighs you down. Embrace what matters. Look around and see that even in its simplicity, life is extraordinary. Thank you for listening. May your path be filled with peace, meaning, and heartwarming moments, because in the end we take nothing, but we leave a lot when we live truthfully. In the final years of his life, Einstein began to write more intimate letters and texts in which he spoke about life, peace, simplicity, aging, and even the acceptance of death. He was known for his vision that was not only scientific, but also deeply human. He valued silence, contemplation, authenticity, and had a calm relationship with the passage of time. Life is like riding a bicycle. To keep your balance, you have to keep moving. Albert Einstein. If this reflection made sense to you, enjoy the video, subscribe to the channel, and activate notifications to receive more stories and reflections like this one. That way, you won't miss out on any new content. Take care and see you next time.